welcome to Bleep Your Tears, a show where we take something and we rank it, put it in our tier lists, and piss off the internet. So,
yes, and today we're going to be ranking pieces of plastic.
Exactly, with wires inside.
Yes.
Who doesn't love wires? We're ranking video game consoles.
Yes, we are.
I think this is going to be a fun one, and one where we only slightly maybe piss off the internet. I don't know.
This will be very interesting because they're like...
I don't know anymore.
Because, as with our other tier lists, there are so many aspects that we can take into account with these consoles. We can take the games that were on them, obviously, but we have like the design of the console, the design of the controller, the commercials that were available for
the specs,
the price, everything about these consoles.
How they resonated with you, potentially when they came out.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that there may be some more modern consoles that maybe resonated with Mason a little more than they did necessarily me.
Yeah, absolutely.
On that versus, there might be some of the older consoles that Mason goes, I know it existed.
Yeah, I can.
What the fuck is that?
Like just by looking off from what we have, there are only 2 that I can see on here that I'm like, what is that? The rest I at least recognize by sight.
I mean, I recognize them, but I also put this damn thing together.
and Thomas put this together. This is going to be a list more of like we're going by mainly the big consoles.
Yeah, God forbid, hey, you want my thoughts on the Philips CDI? Put in an email.
Yep.
And the response will be, I don't know, I never played one.
So we didn't do like the CDI, the Neo Geos, the ColecoVisions, the Commodore 64s.
ColecoVision, Commodores, Amigas.
Magnavox Odyssey.
Yeah, whatever the other ones are. There's every Pong console ever made. Tier them, boys.
You're telling me you didn't want to put the Vectrex in there?
No, why would I put the Vectrex in there? No one in a million years has thought, yeah, I'll put the Vectrex in with the best consoles ever made.
All right, so we're going to lead it off with our first one here, the Atari.
This is a big one.
Mm-hmm. This is specifically the 2600. Mm-hmm.
This is
the big one.
This is Atom. This is Genesis. There were consoles before this, but there might as well not have been. This might as well have been the first.
This is what created the home console, but also you got to also remember that it was almost exclusively. I say almost exclusively. There are a lot of games that were on it, but it was big bringing over the arcade games to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was its thing. Is the arcade games were getting put on it. They got different license, or sometimes didn't get the full license, but still put them on there.
There was a lot of that shit.
A lot of that.
There's
going
a lot
on.
of bootlegs on the Atari.
And it was also part of the first video game crash.
Well, that's the thing with that. All right, talking about the video game crash, everybody pins it on E.T. E.T. was what made it drop, but it was just the straw that broke the camel's back.
Oh, yeah.
It was all the bootlegs. It was all the really weird, stupid bullshit going on behind the scenes.
And the fact that also kind of arcade... Not that arcade games had disappeared, but that type of arcade games were starting to fade a bit, and people weren't necessarily wanting to play them at home.
Not to interrupt and circle back, we did completely forget to go through our tiers.
That is true. So when we rank them, let's talk about our tiers here, where we might put our... Let's rank them and put them where we might put the Atari 2600 in.
Yes.
Our top level, new high score. Our second level, well, it's the bonus level. At the middle, the most mid of all things, the most mid console I could think of, the Neo Geo. I love you, Neo Geo. Our second from the bottom, Wah! And at the bottom, Buried in a Desert.
Yes. Speaking of which, going back to the Atari.
So the Atari is always interesting to me because it's one of those things where it's like, hey, technically the first Mario games were on an Atari or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Something's coming up the plumbing, poor Luigi's in a bind. Giant turtles out to get him, creepy crabs are right behind. Fireflies, cheaper shikes, they're all coming out the pipes.
Mario, where are you? It's Atari Mario Brothers with Mario from Donkey Kong.
But
That's true.
at the same, because they did all the arcade games, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know, has anyone ever really gone out of their way in modern day to be like, yeah, I'm gonna play an Atari.
Here's
Because
sorry. Go ahead.
the thing with NES, put your fucking hand down, Sean. Fucking saw that. Put fucking down. The thing is, NES games, jumping ahead a bit, you can beat. NES games have endings. NES games have conclusions. Atari doesn't. Atari is score attack.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just what the console was, basically.
You're right though. Atari is it's that arcade feel without pumping quarters in, but also maybe not necessarily the reward of beating some of those arcade games that we think about playing a lot more often.
Right.
Because it is high score. It is Pong. It is Pac-Man.
Right.
If I may make a comparison, the original Atari for me it's a lot like the Beatles. I have a massive amount of respect for what the Atari started, and a lot of what we have today in gaming stems all the way back to the Atari. Would I go back and play the Atari? Absolutely not. Same way that I respect the Beatles for what they started in music, but I'm not necessarily going to go back and listen to them now.
This is fair. I mean, I do really like the Atari. Its controller is so interesting, even though
it's a button and a stick.
It is a lot of it, but also it is wild that is the only true joystick controller we've gotten. In a lot of ways,
that's true.
For modern for consoles it's a joystick.
Yeah.
But
it's very simple.
It's because games advance.
Yes.
That's true. Yeah.
But joysticks still were around on PCs for
I'm aware, but
decades after.
Yeah.
But it is the only one that really utilized that. And we wouldn't really see a stick, until we get to 64 days, on controllers. Which again, that's how video games are. I think, to go around it, I think bonus level, top of bonus level is where I would.
You were thinking top of bonus level?
This is kind of where I'm thinking. It is iconic. It is important. It is a great, piece of history. Unfortunately, at this point, being 40 years old.
Good Lord.
Its time has passed.
To me, the Atari is more interesting because of how they had to work around it. Like that one Indiana Jones game where you had to play with two controllers.
True.
But
have you seen the guy who was like, E.T. is not really that hard, that you just don't understand how to play it, and who's broke it down? He's like, it's actually really easy, but they never told you how to play the game.
Yeah, so it's. For me, it's top of Neo Geo.
That's what I was going to say.
That's fair. I have no problem putting it there as well. I put it more for iconography at bonus level than anything else.
If I took out the iconography, it'd be in WoW.
But that's fair.
I think balancing out the iconography with the infamy, it kind of balances out to Neo Geo, I think.
All right, we've got kind of the god of video games, the creator in a lot of ways of what created video games systems that we know, the NES.
Going back to the comparison I made earlier, if Atari is Adam, is Genesis, the NES is Jesus. I
was going to say it's that painting of Adam.
Yes,
the famous painting. It is. This is after the crash and how video games had kind of fallen off. The return of video games and to the popularity that they are now, Steven, now all stems from the NES and the Famicom.
Thank God for Nintendo pulling the biggest con of all time.
Yes,
and just being like
Trojan horses.
Yeah, it's like, hey, it's an entertainment system. It's not a video game console.
What are you talking about? We give you some other plastic things to go with
Here's
it. It's
Rob.
a toy. Here's Rob. Here's the light gun. Here's the freaking power glove. It makes me feel bad. That's what we got with this thing.
And it's wild to think that Nintendo has been around forever. They only got into video games.
Because they were a playing card company.
Mm-hmm. Hanafuda, yeah.
Yeah, and then they made Donkey Kong, and the rest is history.
And they got sued, and that went under the bus. So now they make video games.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kirby.
Yep. I love the NES. It's one of my all-time favorite systems. I think legitimately the version we've got here, the American version, I like it. It was made for American audience. I do actually prefer the look of the Famicom
Yes.
to it with the controllers on the side.
I should say when I'm putting these in, I'm putting in, they're all bundled together.
Yes.
Like I'm bundling all versions because,
Right.
God forbid, I'm not like, can we talk about the NES? Let's talk about the Famicom. No,
Let's talk about the PlayStation 2 Slim.
but no, I'm talking about just they're all bundled together. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to the NES, my thing is the NES. I obviously was not attached to the NES. I grew up, with. I was fucking not born. So
Yeah, neither was I.
But the NES is something I respect more, especially as I have gone back. I've played old NES games, and it's not flooded with garbage. Like that's the thing, because of even though I love the guy, the Angry Video Game Nerd did kind of give the false assumption that the NES library is 90% garbage. It's not. It's just we were still in that Atari mindset of let's flood the market.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. We hadn't quite gotten away from that yet.
And it was the big step that, you were getting something. The thing about the NES is you were getting something that you weren't getting in arcades. Whereas the
Yes.
Atari was a lot of everything you have here, you can go play it in an arcade as well. It's just at home. The NES still had a lot of arcade games on it, but it started doing a lot of its own thing, and that's where Nintendo really started to branch out with its main party licensing doing their games, with the Mario franchises. Growing and making multiple copies, so much so that they're like, oh, these Americans, they love Mario this much. What's that one game we have? Cool, put Mario on it, and we'll call it Mario 2.
Yeah.
Right.
It cannot be understated the amount of groundbreaking franchises that Nintendo doesn't really use all that often came from the NES. They're better about it now, I will say, about using.
Well, okay, look,
using
I
things
want
like
them to use.
Metroid and-
Look, I want them to use Kid Icarus again. What the fuck was groundbreaking about that kind of thing?
I mean, that's fair.
But yeah, the amount of franchises that just got its start on NES, Mario, Mega Man, Zelda, Metroid, all this shit. There's.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the first Mother game was a Famicom game, wasn't it?
Yes, and
Yeah.
also Kirby was on the NES.
Kirby
Kirby
was.
was Game Boy, but then first
I think it's
console
first
game
console
was
game.
NES.
Yeah.
First console game was NES. For me, I would put it top of whatever the second one is.
Bonus level?
Bonus level, yeah.
I agree. I think I agree with that.
I would put it on new high score, but I'm probably, at the bare minimum, I realize this is probably not going to be a win for me, so I'm just going to accept that I probably will. It'll be top of bonus level here. I think I hold the NES higher than a lot of people. It had an anniversary not that long ago, and I remember posting online that the goat's birthday, and I got a lot of people saying if you put Super in front of it, you'd be right. So I just.
Including me. No.
My thing about the NES is it's not my favorite console. No, it's not even my top 5. But it is just everything about it and what it created is just so important to me.
I understand. I'm a Nintendo whore, so I'll be gushing about a lot of other Nintendo consoles, but
That's fair. All right. Now, with the success of the Nintendo, they went on into the handheld market and created the Game Boy.
The Game Boy. This is a classic.
similar. I don't know if it was the first handheld. Might as well have been.
Yeah.
Might as well have been.
Yeah, might as well have been the only handheld console at the time.
Hey! Don't talk the Game Gear.
And
Once you get that car battery in there, it's a great console.
the thing about the Game Boy that is amazing in all of it is that it probably would have sold fine. It probably would have been a big seller. But if they had not found their way to the Tetris license and packaged Game Boys with Tetris, that legitimately was one of the biggest selling points of the Game Boy is we have Tetris and you have it on the go and it comes with the system in a lot of packages.
Hey, we'll talk about pack-in games more later, but it shouldn't be understated the amount of effect Tetris had.
Absolutely.
And how Nintendo focused so heavily on games on it and the gameplay of it and everything on that system that it would While as we will talk as we get to a couple systems that would be much more capable, more powerful, that were just destroyed by the Game Boy's popularity, and for the longest time, the most popular system ever, the Game Boy, in all its iterations.
So the original Game Boy is actually, it's a very interesting console to look at, both in context with when it was released and today. How many odd years it's been since it's come out. Because
A lot.
Because if you look at it next to its closest competitor, the Game Gear, the Game Gear, it could display more than one color. It had the more advanced games, but the two most important aspects of the Game Boy that helped it beat out the Game Gear in the end was affordability and battery life. Those were the two big ones. Battery life especially, and I kind of get the feeling that like today, battery life is still an issue, but not as big of an issue as it was back then. So I think in like today's current console climate, that's a lot of C's, that I think a Game Gear type console would beat it over, I think.
It wouldn't surprise me. Battery life was huge. Could you take it on a road trip? You couldn't really take the Game Gear on a road trip unless you had the extra packs and the hook on, and you hooked it up to your actual car.
And you also had a pocket big enough to fit it in.
One of my favorite commercials is... just for the sheer hypocrisy, is a Game Gear commercial where some guy's trying to sneak a Super Nintendo onto an airplane, and like there's a plug all the way from out of the airplane into his house, and some guy's like, I have a Genesis in my pocket, it's a Game Gear. It's like, yeah, you have it for 3 hours, bitch.
The interesting thing about the Game Boy, and before we put it on the tiers here, I think is they knew that people wanted color system. They couldn't get it to the graphics and the capability and the power that they wanted to make that color system for the long time. But they actually trolled people with it when they revealed the color Game Boy at an E3. You know what the color Game Boy was?
It's just the Game Boy.
It's the Game Boy Pocket, but with different colors of it.
Yeah.
That's right. I remember that.
Because they knew that it was going to come eventually, but they weren't to the place where they felt comfortable, and it was with battery life. They were not comfortable with the battery life, with the colored stuff at that time, and so they waited and waited and waited. I love the Game Boy. I think the original Game Boy, though, as iconic as it is probably my least favorite of the Game Boys.
Same.
I think ratings-wise, I'd go either top of Neo Geo or behind the NES on bonus level, as long as it's just in between.
I was thinking behind NES.
I was saying behind NES.
Behind
It's
NES
not
right
above
there?
the NES, but right behind it.
Okay.
By the way, in case people are wondering, yes, it bothers me too that some of them have white backgrounds. Don't question it. I was an
It's okay. We're just gonna really trigger those with
Color problem.
yeah. All right.
The Genesis.
The game the system that made video games go before Congress.
Oh my God, that's right.
Fighting game. You begin by facing your opponent one-on-one and using special weapons or kicks or punches to defeat him.
On the left, Bill Malice, video game aficionado. On the right, Rose Dyson of Canadians concerned about violence in entertainment. Is Mortal Kombat really suitable for kids?
It's training them to enjoy and like violence as a form of conflict resolution.
This is a fantasy. This is not reality. And I don't believe people could punch somebody's head off if they tried.
That with
Mega
Night
Drive
with
/
Night Trap.
Genesis.
Yeah.
Well, that was the CD, but
Oh well, yeah.
I love the Genesis.
The Genesis. This is where we've got.
Let me correct it. I love Genesis games.
We've had a lot of firsts on here. We've had the first big console. We've had the first big home console. We've had the first big Nintendo home console. We've had the first handheld. Now we have the first. We have the birth of the console wars. They hadn't really been a thing until this generation, and they were especially a thing in this generation. You don't come out with an advertisement campaign called "Genesis does what Nintendo don't" if you're not intent on drawing blood.
because at this point it was actually like feasible why you'd go for the Genesis over the Super Nintendo.
Yes.
The Super Nintendo was more expensive, and yeah, that was pretty much it. The
It
Super
was- it
Nintendo
was-
was $50 more expensive.
It
And
was more expensive, and there were a couple of I believe the Genesis had better sound quality, and could also display more colors on screen if I remember correctly. If I remember, I could be remembering.
But also,
that wrong.
here's the thing to remember on these two systems, which we're going to get to them. But the Sega was the first time. Look, almost all the third-party games were on both systems. Now there were
Yes.
different variations of mature game versus teen game and Nintendo and all those sort of things that did exist. But what it came down to, for the first time, and what you mean for the console wars, is it came down to the first-party games.
Yes.
Were you a Mario guy or a Sonic guy?
Yes.
Were you into Comic Zone or whatever the Super Nintendo had?
Were you into Zelda or Altered Beast? It was a tit for tat.
And absolutely that you could play a lot of the same games on both systems. And a lot of times the Sega version was better of a lot of those games.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned
Cough, Mortal Kombat.
I think I mentioned it back on our Bleep You playing Battletoads versus Double Dragon episode that I played it on the Genesis, and I prefer that version to the Super Nintendo version.
That's right. That's right.
But I do think that this is with the console wars and everything on this, and this created, perfect for the existence across the board that is still held at well, I'm a Sega household. Nintendo doesn't belong in here. We'll later get in there. Sony, don't allow Microsoft to cross the threshold, real battles and real absolute hatred of systems came out.
Yes.
Of this.
And a lot of that started with the Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
With this generation specifically.
And I said, I love the sleek design of the Sega. You
It
know
is
what I
very
do?
cool.
You know what I don't necessarily love about the Sega?
What's
controller.
The controller.
Really?
I'm not. I mean, the Genesis controller isn't. It's not a bad controller, but it's got that big jelly bean shape. The three buttons don't always. So a lot of times they all do the same thing in games.
That's why you go for the 6-button controller. More buttons for more things.
And again, I don't think the Sega Genesis controller is bad, but I love the Super Nintendo controller. Still to this day, I love the simplicity of it.
It is very good.
But it is the only thing that holds back the Genesis in my mind.
Interesting.
But
I don't really have.
I
I
would
have that
rank
much
it.
problem with the.
I would rank
controller.
Genesis very high, so I'm very interested to see where you guys are thinking.
I'm honestly thinking new high score personally.
I was going bonus level.
Okay.
Now, where in bonus level?
I mean, I was going top.
Okay,
I was
top of
going
bonus
top
level.
of bonus
I'll
level.
accept that.
I think I will accept it as well because I do think as a console I like it more than the NES. Even if the NES is more iconic, I do think I like it. I may complain about the controller. It is a better controller than the American NES controller.
Oh boy.
The Square.
Yeah.
But I
brick.
do really like the Sega, so I'm there. All right, it's Battlemate, the Super Nintendo.
The sparring partner.
Yeah, that's new high score.
Yeah.
That's probably
This is my first system. I'm going to put it up here. We'll talk about it. We know it's high. But the first system I ever got was a Super Nintendo. I was saving all my money from different things that I'd done, allowances. I worked for my dad a little bit and had gotten a few checks here and there for things. I've saved my pennies. But I don't remember how much short. I want to say like $100 short. I was still a ways away. And my dad made a deal with me because I loved watching Power Rangers, but it was giving my brother nightmares. He would sneak and watch it, and so my dad made a deal with me. You stop watching Power Rangers, and I'll make sure you get that Super Nintendo.
Wow.
And I said, deal.
All right. Wow.
Now I can play Power Rangers on the Super Nintendo.
So then I played the Super Nintendo, and then I would go over to my friend's house and watch Power Rangers.
What a weird deal. Wow. The crazy thing about the Super Nintendo is it's wild to think about how old is the Super Nintendo now?
90.
It was like 91.
It's 91, right? It's either 91 or 92.
Right, roundabout. So it's been around for a long time. There are so many franchise entries on this console that many people still consider to be the franchises at their peak, with games like Super Mario World and Super Metroid and Link to the Past. A lot of people still consider those the best games in that franchise.
Star Fox.
And Star Fox was started on that console.
I was going to say Star Fox started, F-Zero started.
F-Zero started. Super Mario Kart, for crying out loud.
It's where you arguably got the, by a lot of people's takes, the best Final Fantasy.
that's
in
right.
Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah.
Or 3 in America when it came
Right,
over here. But,
right.
you know, it was
Six because we're fucking weebs
Yeah,
here.
Right.
but the last, it was, you know, the last system, you know, Square would then move over to Sony in the next console cycle, which was big because Square made a lot of Nintendo games, from Dragon Quest to Final Fantasy to obviously Super Mario RPG.
Yeah,
Did they also do Chrono Trigger?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that
Chrono
would've been
Trigger
Chrono Trigger,
and Chrono
yeah.
Cross.
Yeah.
They made tons of these like games for Nintendo, and they would go over to Sony, which was a huge deal at the time. The Super Nintendo is just like it is the defining system of the 90s.
Yeah, and one of the reasons it's up so high for me is that the Super Nintendo was the first generation where it's like, oh, games can be more than bleep bloop pixel blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that there wasn't that on the NES. No, there was. I'm not going to act like there wasn't. But like at the same time, again, people remember Final Fantasy VI.
Mm-hmm.
People remember Mega Man 7 even
Yeah.
had a lot more story elements.
Mm-hmm.
There was, for me, games like Demon's Crest and Blackthorn where they really delve into the lore. Who delves into the lore of the Super Nintendo games? These fuckers.
You brought up Mega Man. Mega Man X also started on this.
Mega Man
on
X
this
started
console
on
too,
this
yeah.
console, which was the more lore-heavy Mega Man series,
Yeah.
and many people consider it the best Mega Man series.
Not to mention even still some of your like arcadey or more like, you know, level based games like Mario and Donkey Kong had their heaviest lore games to the time in World and the Country series. You know, the fact that the Country series existed, you know, brought Donkey Kong back as being a arcade guy into a main Nintendo character.
Yeah,
That's true.
It brought Donkey Kong from being just the guy Mario beat that one time to an actual character.
Going back to something that you said about it being the defining console of the '90s, I'm not denying like its iconography, and I'm not saying that it should go any lower than the tier it's in. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is, I'll give you defining console of the early '90s because I think as we get to the late
I know which one
90s
you're thinking about. I know which system I think you're thinking about as the defining one, and I don't necessarily disagree. That is my number 2 of the '90s. I think its follow-up is the defining one.
Okay. I'd go most defining is the one I think is.
That's fair. It'll be an interesting discussion when we get to that. But first, let's talk about the Game Gear.
again.
I mean, we've
Game
already
Gear,
kind
part
of said
two.
everything.
The Game Gear is awesome if it had a battery life. That's
it had
why
a battery life and if it could fit in a pocket.
That's why a lot of the Game Gear games that
cargo shorts, baby.
when they get released on new as sets, or you find all of them and you get to play Game Gear, they are awesome. Game Gear games rock. It just was a very frustrating system. It was big, it was bulky, gorgeous. It took too much battery life, but it had the best version of Super Star Wars on it. The Game Gear Super Star Wars is so good.
How many batteries did it take? Didn't it take
It was
all.
like 6 AA's.
It was
or
6
something.
double A's.
All. The answer
all
is-
of the batteries.
Yeah, every
all the
battery in
batteries.
the house. And it still wasn't enough.
I would put this in Neo Geo because
That's
I
kinda what I
think
was
the game the fact that the great games it has keeps it up from wah, but the system as a whole is it is mostly a whiff.
Like we'll give like credit to Sega where it's due. They definitely tried with the Game Gear.
Oh, yeah.
The technology just wasn't quite.
Oh
there
yeah,
yet,
and
which
again,
is
if the Game
very
Gear was just literally was a in-home console with the games that it had on it, I think it would be a higher list.
yes.
But I think because the Game Gear, the way it is, they said, "Hey Sega, release more of those Game Gear games and sets, please," because there
That
are
would be-
so
that'd
many
be
good
cool.
Game Gear games.
No. Oh.
Okay. All right, let's jump onto a different Sega system.
That is
What is
that is
that?
the Saturn.
It's a Saturn, Mason.
Oh, what's a Saturn? No, okay. I
I
knew.
swear to Christ.
I know what the Sega Saturn is.
So-
I really shouldn't know what the Sega Saturn is because
So kind of the thing with the Sega Saturn, again, I put this on here. It is almost exclusively because I think the Sega Saturn is one of the funniest consoles ever made.
Yes.
Because one of my favorite stories about the Sega Saturn, I've told this story on the podcast before. In Japan, it was much bigger than it was in America. So in Japan, you can get Sega Saturn games for like $50. You can get Panzer Dragoon Trilogy for $50. What is it in America? $1,200.
sheesh.
The Saturn was, as I said, Sega still controlled Japan. Like in a lot of things. Like obviously Nintendo was big, but Nintendo had North America and all their releases that was carrying them. Sega had a lot of Japanese and the Japanese audience very much, and the Saturn was very big. Technologically, it was a step up.
And it's really all
And
there is to say about
the
it.
negative of that was that if you think consoles are expensive now,
Oh yeah,
it
the
was
Saturn was really
expensive.
the
expensive.
Sega Saturn was ridiculously expensive.
There was a very strong argument to be made that the Saturn killed Sega as a console maker.
Yeah, I
There's
think
a very strong
the
argument
Dreamcast
to
has
be made.
everything around it, and we'll get to the Dreamcast because everything that hit it and hurt it going against it. But the Dreamcast is such a great system, and we'll obviously get to that there. Whereas the Saturn is just and so they had to have nothing go wrong on the outside of the Dreamcast for it to survive, because the Saturn was such a big detriment to their worldwide empire that they were trying to create.
And Sega just the Saturn could have been something great, but Sega fumbled it so hard by pissing off Walmart so they wouldn't carry it in their stores, by not putting out a frickin' Sonic game for it, an original Sonic game for it.
All right, look, I'm the Sonic fan around here. A Sonic game wouldn't have saved it.
No.
It
Would have done it. It would have helped it at least a little bit.
I mean, maybe, but also,
And remember, Sonic was also in there. Sega said Sonic was done.
I mean,
At that
also,
point, Sonic was done. Nobody wants new Sonic games.
also, if
How
I'm being
wrong they were.
also if I'm being perfectly honest, Sonic Extreme looked like it would have fucking sucked. Like, from
It does.
From the gameplay trailers, I'm like, that looks like it would have sucked. And my worry is that if that had come out, Sonic would have been right alongside fucking Awesome Possum or people like that. Just another part of the 16-bit generation that was killed when it went to 3D.
Yep, I do think
I
so.
mean, Awesome Possum never went to 3D, but you know what I'm fucking...
Right.
I don't think I want to put it Buried in the Desert.
No,
I think it's wah.
It's gotta be wah.
It's wah.
It's gotta be wah.
It's not quite it, because there is a lot of technological things that we will see that they used later on in their final system. But it is from top to bottom a big whiff by Sega.
A massive
All right,
swing and a miss.
I am assuming this is the one that you were referring to as the console of the 90s.
This for me, this is the console of the 90s.
And I honestly don't disagree with you. I do think the Super Nintendo, I pick it for it because of just everything that it had going for it and what it created. But you are not wrong in saying that. It's the Sony PlayStation.
It's the Sony PlayStation. It is one of the highest selling consoles of all time. I believe it was the first home console to sell over 100 million units.
It
is
ridiculous. It is they created mascots for it. You know, we had Crash, we had Lara Croft, we had Cloud. You know,
we had Spyro.
We had Spyro later on in it. We had all these things. My goodness. It also was the first console system to kind of have that iconic sound when you booted it up.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's-
Ding. Yeah, that thing.
It had that sound going through it that the consoles we know consoles by their sounds now.
The crazy thing about the PlayStation is that it was like up until this point, video games had always been a two-man race. It was Nintendo and Sega, and that was the rivalry. And then in comes Sony with like, hey, here's our 32-bit console that's only $299. Here we are. We're bringing it out, and then it just destroyed everybody. They
did so many things as well to really. They went to discs. They went to discs, whereas Nintendo was still stuck on our cartridges, and the cartridges is what pissed off enough developers who struggled with the cartridges and saw how much more capable working on CDs were. and moved over. Square.
What, Nintendo
That's
having
right.
a bad relationship with third parties?
Never.
say it ain't so.
To a point of, also, not even just developers, but people who did the soundtracks for games were like, oh, you mean we can do actual soundtracks now?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, because, I mean, I'm not the biggest RPG guy, but just to compare the two, look at the RPG lineup for Sony versus Nintendo at the time for the 5th generation. For Sony, Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9.
You had
Chrono Cross.
You had Parasite Eve. You had Xenogears. You had.
Was there a Mana game for the PlayStation?
I'm not sure.
No, I don't believe so. I think those were on the Super Nintendo. You had obviously Dragon Quest games were still coming out. You had Vagrant Story.
Vagrant Story, Wild Arms.
Wild Arms. So many.
All these, then go over to Nintendo where you had Paper Mario and Quest 64.
That's what I was going
And
to say.
that's it.
Yep. The development, the fact that also sports games moved from the arcade style they had before that. Like, look, you still had, look at the old Maddens or the old Tecmo Football or NFL Blitz. They still had more of an arcade feel, to starting to get to what we now know as sports games in the PlayStation.
Yes.
Pioneered so many things. To Thomas's favorite thing is all the platformers on the Sony PlayStation.
Yeah, that's true.
There were quite a few.
I think that the only thing that would hold the original PlayStation back for me, and this isn't even just a problem that I have with the PlayStation, it's this generation as a whole. I don't honestly feel like games from this generation have aged the best.
We have heard your conversation.
I can overlook that when it comes to the PlayStation and the absolute powerhouse.
Or to the point of that Sony had a misstep at the beginning and did not have analog sticks on their controller, thinking that analog sticks or rumble was going to be an important feature going forward, and still were able to update a few years later and have those included on the system
with the DualShock.
Or that Sony Japanese developer didn't realize that Americans were dumb, and because on the PlayStation developed, circle is confirm, X is cancel.
Yeah.
But Americans were too dumb, so X became confirm and circle became cancel.
Jeez. How did we miss that?
Because we're Americans and we dumb. It is amazing. The console amazing. I'm assuming you guys are going to outvote me and put it here.
Yes. Is that not where you would put it?
I would put it behind the Super Nintendo, but they're neck and neck for me.
Interesting. Okay.
They are neck and neck for me. I think I hold the Super Nintendo just slightly higher.
The moral of the story is DualShock equals Ape Escape. Ape Escape is the most important game of all time, baby. So,
all right, we're gonna talk about when Game Boy went to color, not color Game Boy, Game Boy Color.
Very different.
Yeah. Not a huge graphical jump when you look at it now, but it was a massive jump then.
yeah, it's for me, the Game Boy Color is almost as important as the Game Boy. Because it was truly that thing that showed, yes, you can have more experiences on the go. Again, Game Boy, there was a bunch of shit for the Game Boy, and I'm not dissing any of that, but the Game Boy Color, it didn't just add color, it added a whole new kind of spectacle thing.
And you had a lot of big franchises make new entries into the Game Boy world, not just takes on the game that were coming on. Like the Mario and the Donkey Kong games a lot of times had just been versions of their console games. But you got things like Zelda on the Game Boy Color, but with Oracle of Seasons and Ages, made by a third-party developer. It was huge at the time.
Here's my big argument for the color. Pokemon.
Yeah.
I could just end it right there, but I'm gonna keep going. You could play.
Buried in the Desert. No.
You could play the first couple of Pokemon games on the original Game Boy.
Yeah, the red, blue, and yellow were all Game Boy games.
Red, blue, and yellow.
Gold, silver, and crystal were Game Boy Color games. And crystal being the hugest and the one that everyone holds back because it had moving sprites.
And that I think the Game Boy Color is where Pokemon's power was truly utilized.
Yes.
To its peak, I think, was with the Game Boy Color.
So weird because everybody says Pokemon. You know what I think of when I think the best game graphically on this is Game Boy Color? Donkey Kong 94.
100%.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Because if you've seen that game, it's shocking how well those sprites move.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
The color, I love the color. I think I would put it below the Genesis.
Okay.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
All right.
I think I would put it above the NES. Definitely not as iconic as the NES, but I think I played more Game Boy Color in my life because of Pokemon. But because of, surprise, but it has so many good games. I love the Game Boy Color, and it was an absolute improvement on the Game Boy, even if it wasn't it was still behind the Game Gear in a lot of the technology.
Yeah.
But it still had great battery.
So it had a battery life.
Yeah, it had battery. Still didn't have a backlight yet.
Oh yeah.
We wouldn't get a backlight for a while.
Not
Nintendo 64, guys.
Okay, so this one is interesting because we've already talked about it before. There's a lot going against the N64. There was a lot going against the N64 before it even came out. They were still sticking with cartridges, which had become outdated.
It was
by
the
this
equivalent
point.
of coding onto stone tablets.
Yes, they were alienating.
They misread the way technology was moving.
They were alienating a lot of their third parties at this time. This is when it really became bad. They waited a whole year after the PlayStation came out to release. Massive mistake, big mistake. So there's a lot riding against the N64. I also don't particularly think we haven't talked a lot about console design, but I don't really think that the N64 is a good-looking console. It's kind of
ugly unless it is the see-through green.
Unless it's any of the colors, I think.
Yeah.
But
what it had going for it that the Sony PlayStation did not. 4 players.
It did have the 4 players. It had the 4 players and also the first-party games that it had. Stuff like Super Mario 64, Mario Kart 64, Ocarina of Time. What was the one that came out?
Majora's Mask.
Donkey Kong 64,
Mario Kart 64.
Banjo-Kazooie, Conker for crying out loud.
GoldenEye. Perfect Dark.
Yeah, like
basically
Super,
everything Rare did.
Super Smash
Rare carried the
Brothers.
Super Smash Brothers started on here for crying out loud. Like
yes,
there were experiences on the N64 that you just couldn't get anywhere else. The only problem was the PlayStation had more experiences.
Its game library was a lot smaller. It was the party system is what it came, which Nintendo kind of will get more. That there are a lot more of those on there. The party system. It did have 4 controllers. They were 4 Nintendo 64 controllers, so you gotta take the great assault there.
The N64 controller, everyone's made fun of it. It's the controller with a dick. But kind of the thing that what I like about the N64 is it is designed for so many different games. You can hold it like this if you want to play it with a platformer. You hold it like this when you're playing it as a shooter. You hold it like this when you're playing a different shooter.
You hold it like this when you throw it in the trash.
The problem is that stuff like Zelda, you would play it like this, and then all of a sudden you would need to use the item buttons up here. And it's like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, it's an interesting controller. I think it gets shit on a little too much, but I also don't think that I would put it high on my controller rankings type of thing like that.
No.
64 is such an interesting system. Honestly, I think I'm putting it at top of Neo Geo.
Yeah, that's where I was thinking.
I think, its games would put it a lot higher, but I think the whole package as a whole is where I put it there.
Okay, all right.
You okay with that, Mason?
I think I would have put it. I would have put it behind in bonus level behind the Game Boy, but since we have so many in there, I think where it's at is fine.
All right, the system that ended Sega.
Rest in peace.
It's the Dreamcast.
And it's for no fault of the Dreamcast own because the Dreamcast is a amazing system.
Dreamcast is actually a pretty good system. The thing that killed the Dreamcast was it was easy as shit to pirate.
It was easy to pirate, and then
And it didn't play
Sega
DVDs.
lost Japan. Because it
Yeah.
didn't play DVDs, and the PlayStation 2 did, and DVDs took off in Japan, and they didn't buy DVD players. They bought a PlayStation 2 to play. The DVD stores and stores didn't sell individual players. They sold PlayStation 2s.
Yeah,
It was so huge. It was a big thing. Similarly to another system later is that when Japan started selling PS3s instead of Blu-ray players, because PS3s were cheaper than your average Blu-ray player.
yeah.
And-
However, none of this makes the Dreamcast as worse because the Dreamcast can detect Gamera's levels as seen in the Gamera trilogy from the 90s. Fucking high score, baby.
I love the Dreamcast. The Dreamcast, the Dreamcast is the first system. Well, not the first, but it was the one that started doing online as like a big thing. Like you.
So here's my thing with the Dreamcast. It's perfect arcade. It is a perfect arcade emulator. Like so many fighting game players, like Marvel vs. Capcom, Street Fighter 3, all those guys, they'll play games on the Dreamcast because it's so perfectly emulates. Soul Calibur.
Yes.
Because it so perfectly emulates that arcade experience. The graphics, the control, all of it is almost perfect to that arcade experience. And as a fighting game I gotta appreciate that.
It also reignited Sonic with Adventure in Venture 2.
Yo, Sonic! Man, stay off the light speed!
My bad.
Sonic Adventure on Sega Dreamcast. It's thinking.
Properly brought them in there with their
Brought back.
3D.
Properly
3D
brought.
It is
debut.
the first system to have an MMO on it.
That's right. Cause what was it?
Skies of Arcadia?
Fantasy Star Online.
No, that's
Fantasy Star Online.
Why was I thinking Skies of Arcadia?
Like
No.
it is. It look. I'm putting it in new high score, and it is such a. It's a system.
I was kidding. Oh shit.
No, I'm not kidding. No, that it is everything. The only thing that holds it back is its game library.
Again, its game library isn't bad. It's just easy as shit to pirate. That's the thing.
And when I say game library, is that after the first couple of years, developers just pulled out and stopped making for it.
Because cowards. No.
I personally
it was a sinking ship.
I personally would put it lower, but I don't think there's any tearing it away from.
It made look. I would listen, but also I'm just like, it is such a great system.
It is.
It truly is. It is sad that it did not get the lifespan. It did not get.
Sega died, but it died with a bang.
But unfortunately, it could not fully recover from the Saturn.
Nope.
Yeah, and it was also nowhere near the match that this next console was.
Yeah, guess who killed the Sega? And honestly,
in my opinion, the best console
the greatest.
ever made.
Yep. I thought about honestly putting this at the end because I wanted the GOAT.
The PS2 is, in my opinion, the greatest console ever.
I actually
just in terms of game library,
biggest
in terms
game
of
library, controller,
in terms of longevity, in terms of support, everything.
The PS2 is the
fucking
the PS2 is the only system to win 2 console wars.
Huh?
It came out and it killed the Dreamcast, and then it came out and it won the console war against Microsoft and Nintendo in the next cycle.
So
it's true, it did.
They won,
despite being
2
older.
console wars. This motherfucker's a veteran.
The PS2 was still having games made when the PS3 was out.
The PS2 still had games being made when the fucking PS4 launched.
Things
the
a beast.
The latest PS2 game, I shit you not, was 2014, the year the PS4 actually started getting off the ground.
Lord.
The only thing that I will put negative knock on it, and this is the greatest console of all time, the only negative on it, Sony, like Nintendo would many times after it, didn't realize online was going to be a thing.
No, they didn't.
Yeah,
and they tried to course correct, and you could do online. It was very annoying to have the setup, and it was Microsoft. That is the one area that Microsoft absolutely dominated everyone in. But that was its one negative, is they could never quite get the online off the ground in this cycle because it was just they did not predict it. But they predicted, like they did with the PlayStation, CDs were the way to go. They moved to DVDs, and they had a very easy to use DVD player. Xbox would also have a DVD player, but it is one of the hardest things to use because you can't use it with a controller.
That's
you
true.
had to buy the DVD remote to use it.
Because so many people didn't buy a PS2 for the game library. They bought it for being a DVD player. I still remember one of the earliest memories of my PS2. Wasn't playing a game on it. We watched Attack of the Clones on it.
Yeah.
You watched Attack of the Clones?
Yeah. It was.
I watched Jonah of VeggieTales movie. We are not the same.
Yeah, you had the better experience.
The amount on it, we could wax poetic for hours. There you go.
Yeah, it's the greatest console. Not my favorite. We'll get to my favorite, but it
is the greatest console of all time.
That's very interesting. My memories with the PS2 will always be with the first Rock Band. We played that thing in my family until that console died.
The amount of PS2 peripherals. There are so many different controller peripherals on it.
I mean, there was light guns for Time Crisis.
Steering wheels for racing games. The chainsaw controller.
All the Rock Band shit. There was.
Which, hey, anybody watching this, Sean would like a chainsaw controller. Please send me one. Anyway.
Merry Christmas.
The game. Okay, now into the same cycle. Arguably the most powerful console of the cycle.
Yeah.
The GameCube?
Yeah.
The GameCube.
Weirdly, when Nintendo had the best graphical system.
So we just talked about the best console. This is my favorite. I love the GameCube so
I do
much.
too.
The thing that the GameCube did really, really well was taking the experiences that had already been done really well on the N64 and then perfecting them on the GameCube with games like Mario Kart Double Dash. However many Mario parties came out on that console. I think it was like 4.
I think
4, 5, 6, and 7, I think so.
I think so. I think it was those 4.
The Mario Sports license. I know we'd had
Yes.
tennis and things like that on the 64, but really starting the Mario Sports license.
It really started with Power Tennis.
Sunshine and Galaxy.
Sunshine. Well, Galaxy.
Galaxy was Wii.
Galaxy Wii? I thought Galaxy.
Galaxy
was Wii. Galaxy was a Wii.
I thought Galaxy 2 was. All right, never mind.
But
Sunshine.
GameCube did have Luigi's Mansion.
Luigi's Mansion, Melee,
Metroid Prime.
Metroid Prime.
F-Zero GX.
F-Zero GX. All of these.
It is the first version of Resident Evil 4. Not the one everyone played, but the first version.
Resident Evil 4 was an exclusive GameCube initially.
For 6 months.
For 6 months, and then it became on everything.
And still is on everything.
Yes,
I love the GameCube. 4 controllers.
Again.
You could play it. It was a party system, but they had so many great systems. The early Call of Duty and Medal of Honor games were on this.
Call of Duty and Medal of Honor.
It had a handle on it. You could take it to lunch.
I'll be perfectly honest. I actually, Medal of Honor Frontline is one of my favorite shooters, and it's on the GameCube. Maybe it's on everything else, but I played it on the GameCube. So.
This is also when Sega died as a console maker. This is where a lot of their IPs flocked to.
They went to their old nemesis.
Yes,
and said, "Hey, would you like?"
Groveling at the feet of.
They said, "Hey, Nintendo, would you like a Sonic?" And Nintendo said,
"Would you like 2 Sonics?
We would like some Sonics.
Would you like a Monkey Ball? Would you like a bit? Was Billy Hatcher on?
Yeah, Billy Hatcher was.
Yeah, would you like a Billy Hatcher?
And so, the GameCube is awesome.
Yes.
Its negatives, there are a few.
Baby discs.
Baby discs.
The baby discs.
Because at least, with the PlayStation and
Nintendo was a petty bitch and didn't want to admit they were wrong.
They were like, "Yeah, we're gonna use discs, but you're not gonna like it."
The other thing is, whereas like a Sony or a PlayStation memory card, the amount it could save on it was a lot. And then you get the GameCube ones, and you'd be like, What you mean I can only save 3 games? What do you mean Metroid Prime takes up my whole thing? What you mean I have to go? I had a giant one specifically for NCAA football because NCAA football wouldn't fit on most memory cards, so I had the one that had 5 times as much memory to fit my football games on it.
Yeesh.
I know it's not actually, but I'm just imagining you lugging in this memory card that's the size of like a laptop, like forcing it in.
No, that'll come for a later system that didn't have memory cards. That read several trends in video games very well that neither the PS2 or the GameCube realized were a thing.
Kind of going back to what we were talking about with Sega, 2 other mascot platformers that also made their way onto the GameCube. Both Crash and Spyro happened here. Whether that's a positive or a negative.
Also, we got Rare's Last Hurrah with Nintendo.
Yeah, we got Star Fox Adventures.
Which is a game.
The GameCube is awesome. I love the GameCube. I would probably put it right here if I'm being honest. Just holding it back there, but I will listen to anything, honestly.
I was putting it where you were putting it, right in front of the Dreamcast.
I think so. Again,
I was gonna put it. I was thinking above PlayStation.
You would put it number 2.
I would put it.
I think what will hold me back is I think these are the systems of the '90s. GameCube was definitely not the system of its decade.
No,
That's
GameCube
fair.
was
That's
not the
very
system.
true.
Of the
Okay,
2000s.
when you put it like that, that makes me okay. Yeah, right there.
All right, the Game Boy was huge. When they moved on to the Game Boy Color, it was huge.
But this isn't even their final
They were
form.
not prepared for how ridiculously big moving to slightly beyond Super Nintendo graphics on handheld was going to be.
The Game Boy Advance.
My God, this system.
This is interesting because when I was a kid, when I was like cognitively aware of what video games were, the Game Boy Advance was still around. It was in the SP form.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what happened. I think it was because it was like right at the tail end of the Game Boy Advance. I was never really into the Game Boy Advance. I saw the DS, specifically for me. I saw the DSi, and I was like, that please, whatever that is.
The
I
thing that
don't
is
really
interesting
need
about
it.
the Game Boy Advance is it went through a pretty full life cycle, but it's still the Nintendo made the DS at the same time as pretty much a year after the SP.
Yeah.
But it had a Game Boy. It wasn't even backwards compatible saying Game Boy. It just played Game Boy Advance games as well because the Game Boy Advance was going to go on for a long period of time. They still made another Game Boy Advance years later, the Micro.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so
it was more like adjacent than backwards.
Sean said it earlier, the GBA was basically a portable Super Nintendo.
Mhm.
A lot of Super Nintendo games got ported to the GBA.
So many. All the Marios got ported. All the Donkey Kongs.
I believe F-Zero.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It also created. They also had one of my absolute favorite pieces of technology created for the Game Boy Advance, the e-reader.
Oh.
And my favorite, I mean, it's hilarious. Where, hey, get a collectible card pack, scan 9 cards, and you can play Donkey Kong Jr. Or, if you have it plugged into your GameCube, because it can be a GameCube controller, and you use the e-reader, you might get an item in your game.
You might do some shit with Animal Crossing.
Mm-hmm. It did Animal Crossing. There were Pokemon stuff. There was actually, I had for Mario Advance, whatever one was Super Mario Bros. 3. I think it probably was just Mario Advance 3 or 4. It might have been 4 that did that. But that had it. You could scan one of your cards on it before starting that game, and you would start with a leaf power up. So there were fun little things you could have on it. Game Boy Advance is great.
I think it is great. The Game Boy Advance is a great system. One of the things that holds it back for me is that it doesn't really have a lot of its own identity with its game library because a lot of it is just taking stuff from the Super Nintendo era and bringing it back.
3 words. Mario and Luigi.
I forgot about
Mario and Luigi. Mario and Donkey Kong.
Well, that
which
shut down my
we're getting a
argument real
repeat
fast.
right now. There is an entire generation of Pokemon fans that grew up on Ruby and Sapphire, which came out that wiped away the Pokemon iconography that we knew for a little bit and created new thing.
What do you mean? You mean you're not talking about the beauty that is Jimmy Neutron Jet Fusion?
What are you talking about? Game Boy Video was a thing. You could watch SpongeBob episodes on.
You could watch Sonic X episodes.
You could watch Shrek in its entirety.
Sonic Advance.
Sonic Advance.
Oh yeah, the first 3. Those were the first handheld. No, wait, no, because Game Gear.
Yeah, Game Gear, but those were the first good. No, I'm kidding.
First Nintendo handheld Sonic.
Yeah,
games.
and the Sonic Advance games are great. So
they are.
This was also for first time of Nintendo fans only who didn't have a PlayStation to get their hands on Final Fantasy 2 and 5.
Yeah, because there were some ports.
They ported all those, as well as the remake / reimagining of Final Fantasy Tactics in Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, which is a fantastic game. I mentioned it on one of our list episodes.
You're really big into the Advance Wars games too.
Advance
aren't you?
Wars,
That started
great
on
system,
there, yeah.
came on it. No, the Game Boy Advance has tons. The Super Mario Kart that came out on it, I love Super Circuit.
Super Circuit, yeah.
Love Super Circuit.
I never played that.
The GBA is awesome. I love the GBA. It is a massively great game library. That being said, it's not my favorite Nintendo handheld, so I think I probably would put it here.
Above the other Nintendo handhelds? Oh wait, we haven't gotten to the.
We haven't gotten to my
gotten
favorite
the
yet.
next one
Yeah, so that's about where
I
put
wouldn't
it.
put it above the Genesis. I don't think.
You would put it below the Genesis?
I'd put it below the Genesis. Yeah, personally.
Put it below the Genesis just because from my angle that looks like it's one continuous picture. And
That's
that makes
fantastic. Also, I will give it, like, even though I think the GBA has a much better game library than the Genesis, I do think the Genesis is a little more iconic, so I will go with that. Mm-hmm. All right, the final one of this console wars that we have here. When an American company, which had not been the success of American companies making game consoles was not a great list, but Bill Gates was like, I want a video game console.
And he had The Rock come out in all of his early 2000s glory to announce the Xbox.
Yes.
And on top of it, they went over to their biggest competitor, Apple, and said, you have this little studio that makes games for you. We're going to pay them all the money to make a first-person shooter for us.
We're gonna make them all.
Hey, Bungie, we know you're making this RTS for Apple right now. We like that idea. How about you made it a shooter and put it on our system?
What if we pay you all the money to make a franchise that will pay us all the money?
And creating, I've talked about many times, creating one of the most iconic franchises of all time that carried this console in
Blink's
Halo.
Time Sweeper, baby.
Exactly. Blink's Time Sweeper. But the thing is, this is the shooter console.
Yes.
Before then, the 64 was the shooter console. This was the shooter console after that. First-person shooters, they built a controller perfect for it. There are other good genres of games that hit the Xbox, but it peaked with first-person shooters.
Yeah, I think that was the thing. It's the Xbox. I was not an original Xbox fan. I have never owned an Xbox in my life, so I apologize. That's a lie. I owned an Xbox 360 for a week. Anyway,
Ouch.
So yeah, the original Xbox, I do like it. I don't like, but the Duke controller's hilarious because you could genuinely kill someone with that thing.
That thing was so huge.
We'll get on to when I think Microsoft kind of fixed a lot of the Xbox problems in their next generation. But the iconic games, the online, the hard drive, where you didn't have to worry about memory cards anymore. The fact that they had just some incredible first-person North American studios making games for them.
The fact that this console was my introduction to Spawn, because Spawn was on Soul Calibur 2. I didn't know who he was.
Yeah, they had Spawn on Soul Calibur 2. The fact that they got the license because through having BioWare as them, getting quite possibly the most iconic Star Wars games of the 2000s and the KOTOR games. The Xbox has got a lot going for it, but I will tell you, in this console wars, it was the one that I did not want. I did not own. I played it because all my friends had Halo, but I was GameCube, PS2 all the way.
I don't like the way this console looks.
That's fair.
I don't like the design of the original Xbox.
I actually don't mind it.
It looks like it looks like a computer. It's fine. I like it. It has a great load up screen. I love the exploding green.
That's true.
It's really cool.
I think my problem with the original Xbox is it looks just too plasticky. It's a little bit too much. Too like.
I think it just looks like what gaming PCs look like, just on its side.
That is true.
Kind of what it looks like.
I think personally, I would have. I know it wouldn't have happened in a million years, but I think I would have preferred it if that original like concept model of the Xbox, where it's literally a giant X. I think it would have been really funny if that was the console we got.
And there's a reason you're not Bill Gates.
4 controllers as well. It also, I think, almost every sports game was on all 3 of the systems. What I've gone back and realized is, and when I played it there, the Xbox was the best. The controller was best for things like Madden and the 2K games. It was great for those sort of systems. I think I put it top of bonus level. Nah, I put it right below the Genesis. Nah, I put it right below the Game Boy Advance. Is where I would put it. Iconic game library, everything going for it, but it wasn't my system, and that's why I put it a little lower.
I was personally, I was thinking like bottom of bonus level, but you put it there, and you put it where you had it before, and I was like, yeah, that looks right.
Yeah, I think that's where I would put it. I think iconic game systems, really important, humongous for pushing specifically pushing Sony to be able to be what they were, having their true competitor for it, and GameCube being like, Nintendo like,
What if motion controls don't open Pandora's box?
All right,
Don't open Pandora's
I put this one on the list as a joke because this is the funniest console ever. I don't think we're gonna spend a whole lot of time. It's buried in the desert. It's one of the worst consoles ever made.
It's the N-Gage.
It's the N-Gage.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
No games.
When no games, they tried to make a phone and a game system as phones were taking off. It would be done a whole lot better later on, but it is the only place you can play the Electra tie-in game.
Buried in the desert for that alone.
Buried in the desert. It was ugly. The games were not particularly great graphics.
The games weren't great. The screen was tiny. You had to take out, I think, the batteries to put games in it.
It was not a great system. Anyway, I just wanted to put it on because I wanted to talk about the N-Gage and how hilarious they thought they had literally made the greatest system ever.
It's ridiculous. It's stupid. It looks like a taco. Get it out of here.
I don't get the taco.
Yeah, I don't know about the taco thing either, but that's what Mason says.
It looks like it. Anyways.
So, remember when I said that the next game...
What won the 7th?
What came out and legitimately fixed all the problems of the original Xbox?
The good old Xbox 360. What won the 7th generation?
The 360 might as well have been the first console I ever owned because this...
It would be that'd be the cycle when you would have been really the age to be playing things.
Because you know we had other consoles before this. We had the PS2. I didn't really play on that much, and that was mostly my dad's console. We did have a Wii. That was more like a toy to me. I never had any.
That is the Wii, yes.
I never had any of the actual good games on that console when I had it.
Yeah, you had Go Vacation.
The 360 was really that was the first console that was like, okay, I like video games now. This was the thing that turned me into the gamer that I am today.
Sad. So kind of the thing is, you say this might have well been your first console. This might as well have been Microsoft's first console. Because this... I mean, what did Microsoft have the original Xbox? They had Halo. With this one, they had Halo, and then they were like, hey, let's put Gears of War in your face and completely change video games.
Cliffy B.
I mean, keep for ages and ages and ages and ages up until I want to say middle of the PS4. Cover shooters were the way to go, and that was all down to Gears of War and the Xbox 360.
But on top of it, again, lots of controllers that you could have. It and the PS3 were pretty much neck and neck graphically. I think the PS3 could reach slightly bigger heights, but also we'll talk about some of the PS3's flaws as a system.
Also, something we haven't mentioned a lot: backwards compatibility. This had backwards compatibility with OG Xbox and kept it.
Yes, that is true. Throughout all of the console revisions that it got.
The things, talk about franchises that kicked on it. BioShock.
Oh, was that on PS3 as well?
Later.
Later.
I'm pretty sure it may have been closer, but it was marketed very much on the Xbox.
Okay. That was the thing about the Xbox versus the PS3. This was one of the first big console wars that I remember, because again, this was when I was cognitively aware of what video games were. The thing that made the Xbox so enticing to developers was that the PS3 was such a behemoth of a console, like technology-wise, and a bitch to develop for. The Xbox, by comparison, was so much easier to develop for, which means a lot of the multi-platform games came to Xbox first.
On top of both between the Xbox and the PS3, and we'll talk a little bit more on the PS3 in a bit, but the thing was that this is also the time when false marketing started happening on consoles. And the PS3 leaned heavily into pre-rendered stuff. Now, Xbox 360 had a bunch as well. It's not just them, but PlayStation 3 did it more, and on their games that were specifically designed to try to be knockout punches to Xbox. And because of that, those weren't the knockout punches that they were supposed to be. Killzone. And it's a pre-rendered trailer. was one of the big ones, but it's not the only one. There are a lot of them. And the 360 just, for the problems with how bulky the Xbox controller was, the 360 controller slimmed it down, made a great controller. It had an easily
rid of those useless black and white buttons,
an easily removable hard drive, and yes, it had the red ring of death. But you know what?
Yeah.
Was super easy. You just called Microsoft or filled it out, and they sent you a new one.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's one of those that's like I understand why people were complaining about it, but whatever. Achievements.
Yeah.
Introduced achievements.
Man, if I'm stealing this joke, if Microsoft had ever made their Smash Brothers, do you think the final boss would have been the Red Ring of Death?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Probably my two fondest memories on the 360 of a whole are playing it with my brother, playing Resident Evil 5 or playing NCAA 2K 07, which I think was the last one. It was either 7 or 8 was the last one. Because, it had while a lot of these games were on the PS3, but the co-op modes felt better always on the Xbox.
Also, what helped the 360 win this generation was when it really started getting tied with Call of Duty.
You're right. You're right.
You're
Modern
right.
Warfare.
You're very true.
Modern Warfare specifically was huge on Xbox,
and so was the first two
Black Ops.
The first two Black Ops. Yeah, those were very big.
I don't want to say a negative because it's only a small thing, but there was the thing about the 360 controllers versus what Sony was doing was Sony's controllers were you charged them and then you didn't have anything. The 360 controllers still took a battery pack on the back to be wireless, which isn't a bad thing, but when the batteries inevitably died or inevitably those battery packs on the back died, you were then stuck with wired controllers.
I do agree, but also it's a really thing. I love the Xbox 360 controller.
Yes,
it's so
specifically
good.
when compared to the PS3 controller. It's a really weird complaint. The PS3 controller's too light.
Yes,
It's
which is
way
something
too
that
light.
something
I
the
always
PlayStation
feel-
would fix in the 4 and 5.
I agree,
a ton.
but like the PS3, I play a lot of PS3.
That controller is so light.
I genuinely, every time I play it, I feel like I'm about to
break it in
Tunes.
half.
And remember, Sony was trying to break away from the controller. They made the boomerang, and everyone was like, "What? No."
Go back.
Because the boomerang is stupid.
But
another game that it's not specific to the 360, especially now, but at the time it certainly was for me. Grand Theft Auto 5
True.
was very big on the 360 for me. It was everywhere, but everyone that I knew had it on the 360.
we've talked a lot. Where are we ranking it?
I would put it. I'm top tier, but I'd put it
I would probably put it right here.
right ahead of the GameCube,
I think I still like the GameCube more, but I think again
just for iconicity.
the flaws of the GameCube are bigger than the flaws of the 360 in my opinion.
Personally, I would personally put it above the PS1, but I feel like if I try to argue that, you're just gonna pull it back further.
No, I struggle with putting anything above those two of the 90s that created it, but I can we compromise and put it between?
We'll put it in between.
Okay, yeah, that's
I
fine.
think that's a good compromise.
that's
I
a
don't
very
hate
good
it. I don't hate that at all. All right. Look, I love this. I'm going to talk. I talk all the time. I love the PSP.
The what?
The
The
what? But clearly Sony didn't love the PSP.
Hey, you know what? The PSP was a really great PS1 classic machine.
It's kind of funny when you think about it how Nintendo basically recreated the Game Boy versus the Game Gear with the DS versus the PSP. It was a very similar rivalry there. Mm-hmm. Where the PSP was clearly the more advanced console, but the DS just won everybody over.
PSP
and
is
became
great.
Phenomenal.
It has really good graphics. There are a lot, like so many big franchises put spin-off titles on it. God of War, Soul Calibur, Tekken, Final Fantasy VII, Kingdom Hearts, Daxter.
But that was the thing though, they were all spin-offs. They weren't mainline console games. They were all spin-offs.
Well, yeah, but that's still...
well, with Kingdom Hearts, it might as well have been a fucking mainline game.
Yeah, Kingdom Hearts is basically just Final Fantasy and Disney collabing, but at the same time, it was its own game.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But all that... So. I love the PSP. I know that I'm the one that played it. I would put it in bonus level, but I know it's probably going to be a little lower for everybody else.
I was going to say, I'd put it, whatever the hell we have is mid, but...
Neo Geo?
Yeah.
Put it above. Yeah, put it right there.
You want below the 64?
No, yeah, right there.
Okay, that's acceptable. I will accept it even if I disagree a little bit because I'm a PSP love.
I would not spend much time. I didn't play the PSP.
Yep.
Neither did I.
All right. We talked a lot about the 360, and we did talk a lot in it about the PlayStation 3. It was its competitor. They came out pretty damn close to each other. The big positives was its interface, Blu-ray that we're able to take off because my 360 was HD DVD, which was the loser in that set.
Yep,
it still had some really good exclusive titles. God of War 3.
God of War 3, it had Twisted Metal.
Mm-hmm.
It's Twisted Metal reboot.
Metal Gear Solid 4.
Metal Gear Solid 4. The PS3 still had... This was when Sony actually had franchises. Shock of all shocks. I mean, this is a console that's very near and dear to my heart. This was my first console where I started really getting into gaming.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this was the one where I started really getting into... really starting to actually, get into gaming, realize why I liked it.
Wow, so we were on very different sides of that.
Little Big Planet, and for me, I got the system. I've said I got my PS3 was a Batman pack. It came with the Dark Knight Blu-ray and Arkham Asylum.
Oh, wow.
Also, I think it came with Infamous. I think Infamous also came with it randomly.
Oh, that's right, because Infamous was also with PS3. That was an exclusive.
But yeah,
in terms of exclusives, I think the PS3 beat the 360 personally, but it was a bitch.
It was a bitch to develop for.
It was a bitch to develop for. It was a bitch to buy because it was expensive, and there were so many different versions of it that had certain things that others didn't.
They got rid of backwards compatibility from the OG because a lot of the developing process was hard. It also had a lot of disc flaws. While the Red Ring of Death is obviously the big popular one, the PS3 had a lot of warranty issues as well.
Yeah.
This was the console where we were getting into we're gonna have to fix things on the fly.
Yeah, patches, baby.
And while Sony was really trying to get into online stuff and having PS3 did start really creating the online, having good online. They finally figured out a lot of their online stuff with the 4 a lot better.
Yeah.
The 3 did have a lot of extra capabilities. It had a good library. The PS3 is awesome. But I think when we talked about it, it's just like there are enough negatives to knock the PS3 down because of things that they did. That I think they do fix a lot with their next console. But I think the thing that the PS3 has is the game library was so good.
The game library was great. So.
I think I would put it top of bonus level.
I was gonna say middle of bonus level. But...
I think top of bonus level's good.
Here?
Yeah, that's where I was thinking.
Okay. I think I'd put it above the original Xbox, but I actually do kind of like it below the GBA.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
All right. Nintendo Peak handheld.
The
Nintendo DS.
The single reason why I didn't make a lot of friends in elementary school.
You're saying that you guys all didn't PictoChat?
Shockingly, no, I was not.
Oh gosh,
PictoChat.
I was
funnest part of
I was
PictoChat,
not a big PictoChat.
Nintendo jumping into online gaming with Mario Kart DS and
that's where I saw
Metroid Prime Hunters. And initially at launch, the only place you could play it online was in a McDonald's because they had an exclusive deal with McDonald's. The only online you could only play at McDonald's for a while.
That's wild. But yeah, that right there, the Mario Kart DS. That is probably across all of the consoles that I've ever played on, that I've ever owned, that's probably the game I have sunk the most hours into. Even, I think it's still the case even today when I don't even play it anymore. I played it so much as a kid.
The thing that was great about the DS is it has a huge game library. We've talked about some of the bad game libraries before, but it has a huge game, but it's massive because it's a GBA game library as well.
Yeah,
I probably played more GBA games on my DS than I played DS games.
See, I didn't personally because I had
you're
DSi.
a child.
I was also a child. I had a DSi that gutted GBA backwards compatibility, which I didn't really notice that much because I didn't notice the GBA that much.
Not to mention they created a console that cut into your hands by holding it, and yet we still were like, this is amazing. The scars that I have, they strengthened me.
These are battle wounds, baby.
There were so many wonderful games on the DS. Sonic, we talked about it on the GBA, but it had Sonic Rush.
And Rush Adventure.
Yes. We don't talk about that one. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, man,
I haven't actually played that one, so I'm being a bit of a dick.
Mario 64 DS, one of the launches.
Mario 64 DS, Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story, Mario and Luigi Partners in Time.
Mm-hmm.
Is that DS? Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. It had a lot of even though the DS Pokemon games are a little more maligned, specifically Diamond and Pearl by some people because those are kind of the weakest in a lot of it. And then Wrong Opinions, Black and White, which are some of the best Pokemon games. Wrong Opinions, people, that's such
those
a good game.
Those were the only ones that, Black 2 was the only one that I've played.
Oh, so you played the really bad one. Got it.
Oh, I see, I didn't know.
But also, Mystery Dungeons really took off from Pokemon.
Mystery Dungeons took on for... The only thing I know about Black and White is that it's in America, and I know that because I watched a review where they started playing the song "Living in America."
Phoenix Wright.
Phoenix
Wright.
Yeah, started on the Game Boy Advance, peaked at started getting better.
The surgery game where you played the
Trauma Center.
Trauma Center started on Trauma Center started on the DS.
Really?
Touchscreen was huge.
Professor Layton.
Yeah, Professor Layton. Hey, Nintendo, though, nobody wants to blow into their system.
No,
no one wants to blow into their system. Fuck.
But there's so many great there's so many great games. The stylus was awesome.
DS.
Mario Party, it was a great system.
I can tell I was a lonely child. I didn't play this.
Same.
Shit.
I didn't play it either. I played Pokemon. I played a little bit. The best story is I got Metroid Prime Hunters. Really is a good game. I am miserable at it. Played it a little bit, then tried to play it online. Got my ass handed to me. Took it to GameStop and returned it, and then got X-Men Legends, the Apocalypse X-Men game.
X-Men Legends to a Reign of Apocalypse.
Yeah. Traded it in for that one, and I was like, X-Men.
All is right with the world.
Excellent.
Sonic Rush, that was the one I played a bunch. So
I would put it right here, right above the GameCube.
I'd put it above the Super Nintendo.
You think above the Super Nintendo?
I think so. Right there. Because those two paired to, the DS and the 360, those were my two consoles.
I will accept it simply because almost all of the Super Nintendo games I liked to play, I could also play on the DS because of the GBA.
That's true.
Yeah, but you can't play Blackthorn and Demon's Crest. It goes bottom. No, I'm kidding.
I will also say, we also started to get remasters, reboots and remakes and remasters of games. My favorite, I mentioned Mario 64, but also Final Fantasy 3 and Final Fantasy 4 got 3D remakes on the DS.
Yeah.
New Super Mario Brothers.
True.
There it is.
All right.
No, I'm kidding.
Nintendo really leaning into the party systems.
Nintendo Wii. I don't hate the Wii as much as other people. I don't love it as much as other people. Nintendo Wii is the epitome of a console. I'm like, that exists.
The Wii is one of the coolest consoles. It's awesome. There's so many great things. It was backwards compatible with the GameCube. That's right. That's what I played mostly on a GameCube games. Because you know what? There are so many bad Wii games.
Well, because that was a shovelware.
Yeah, it was a very...
But that's not...
plagued with shovelware.
I mean, that's the Atari thing. It's not necessarily that system's fault. That's just...
It still has great games, but I also, at the time it came out, I kind of was outgrowing some of the Nintendo licensed character games.
Yeah.
At the time, this is more a me problem. It's definitely not a Wii problem. But
hey, they're wrong.
But absolutely, that was something that was going on at the time. I stood in line to try to get a Wii at a Best Buy, and I was 52nd in line out of the 50 people. 50 people got Wiis that night.
Ouch.
I finally got it later on. It had Smash Bros.
I was gonna say
it had Brawl.
That's kind of the thing. The Wii was my introduction to Smash Brothers and to a whole bunch of Nintendo characters. I still have a soft spot for Brawl all these years later. I don't care if it's technically the worst. Fuck you, Subspace Emissary exists.
It does.
I like Brawl. It is honestly probably my least favorite, but that's like saying like this thing that I love is my least favorite. Like it's it's 10 out of 10, 9.9. You know,
right?
The thing about the Wii was, I think when I had a Wii, I very much took it for granted and looked at it more as a toy than like an actual dedicated console, because there were a lot of like actual solid console experiences to be had on this. You had the Metroid Prime games came over to the Wii. You had Mario Kart Wii was on there. You had there were Call of Duty games were on the Wii, barely, but they were on there.
Actually, Medal of Honor had some Wii games, and believe it or not, that's some people's definitive way to play those Medal of Honor games.
It also unfortunately had very bad ports of Far Cry games.
Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 was also on this, and for many people, that's their definitive way to play
The Resident Evil rail shooters were on this. Umbrella Chronicles.
The Conduit. I know nobody else except me cares about the Conduit, but
there's a lot of good games on it. Galaxy.
Galaxy 1 and 2.
Both Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword came out on it.
I mean, Twilight Princess was both GameCube and Wii. But
yeah, but because it was kind of in that middle ground, a lot of it. But it's a good system that unfortunately third-party developers did not know what to do with it.
No, they didn't. They really didn't.
And that is probably the biggest problem on it.
The thing with the Wii is that for every time that a third-party developer did something good, those Medal of Honor games that people love, we did, oh no, we broke it. So,
yeah.
There's so many bad Wii ports of games.
There's so many bad Wii ports. Who asked for X-Men Origins on the Wii? Like, that's all I'm asking.
So, in all of that, I think I put it in Neo Geo. I think I kind of put middle of Neo Geo.
I don't know if I'd put it that low, because I don't. It's hard to deny that the Wii was a massive sensation.
The Wii was a phenomenon.
I agree. It's a sensation.
Consoles sold. I think it deserves to at least be on the same level as the Game Boy, because they were because the I'm trying to think of the way to phrase, like the hype around both were very similar.
I just don't think I would put it above a Nintendo 64, or I would put it over my beloved PSP.
Well, that's you.
UMD for life, baby.
Oh, jeez.
Hey, you're bringing it back. Nintendo finally course corrected in this one and said DVDs are the future.
It did happen.
It took them 9 fucking years.
As Blu-rays were taking off, they're like, have you heard about these DVDs?
Here's this is my final argument that's going to try to get you to bring it up. Netflix on the Wii was a very big deal.
I never used it, but
I did, and I remember it being in the advertisements for Netflix all the time.
I did use it a lot.
I will bump it ahead of my beloved PSP.
There you go.
All right.
If that's as high as it'll go, I'll take it.
Now the system that Nintendo really didn't know what to do with.
That's Satoru Iwata had to take 50% of his paycheck off to cover it.
No way, really?
The Wii U.
Yeah.
Wii U, Wii U, Wii U. All right.
God, what a joke.
Hello, Wii U.
I disagree with joke, because there is genuinely... I know it's easy to make fun of the Wii U, but there are genuinely some good things.
There absolutely
Wii U.
are. It had legitimately, it has Nintendo's best online library ever, and they got rid of it.
Yep, it had the eShop. That was my first time playing Wario Land 4 on that thing. God, I love Wario Land 4 so much.
The gamepad is not a bad idea. I think the thing about the Wii U, and the thing that is they took the Wii and the Wii U and what they learned from it to develop the Switch. The Wii U there's so many good things about the Wii U. It just, unfortunately, they didn't really know what they were 100% doing.
The Wii U might as well be called the Switch Beta. That's kind of it.
Yeah, I can see that.
The gamepad is a very interesting console idea. And
it made the Wii U more expensive than it needed to be, and it wasn't really utilized that well.
And the Wii U also, in a lot of ways, wasn't that much better technological than the Wii. It was only a small step up.
It wasn't that great.
And so in the end, again, I think that it is a maligned system. I understand why it's maligned. I think a lot of it is wrong for being maligned, because I do think there is a lot to it. It just never met its capabilities.
No, and admittedly, I defended it. I still have one. It's a Wii. I use it for the Wii games.
That's why I think I would put it right beside the Game Gear, either right behind or right in front, because it's very similar to the Game Gear.
I was going to put it in Wah.
You want to put it in Wah?
I was thinking. Put it in Wah, at least above.
I think I'd put it above the Saturn.
Yeah.
I think, above the Saturn, because the Wii U was an embarrassment. It wasn't as much of an embarrassment as the Saturn.
All right.
As the Saturn was to Sega, I think.
Remember Avatar? Remember how 3D was a thing? Nintendo also loved that.
What's an avatar? No,
And they created the 3DS.
yeah, really capitalizing on a craze that it really just
It's fine.
It's a roller coaster.
It's kind of my thing. The 3DS is just fine.
Look, the 3DS has one of the best game libraries of a handheld system.
Yes.
Ridiculously good game library. You know how I play those games? I play them on the 2DS. Because I didn't really like the 3DS.
Yeah, you played it on the door wedge with 2 screens.
Exactly. I like the door wedge.
I give credit. The 3DS had a bunch of great relaunches. It had Kid Icarus Uprising. Genuinely one of my favorite games of all time is on
The
that
first
system.
time
Star
we had
Fox 64 3D, Ocarina of Time 3D.
Smash Bros. On a handheld console.
That was the first Smash Brothers game I ever played.
That was huge
3DS.
idea. Like the 3DS.
That was the whole reason why I wanted a 3DS.
The two Pokemon X and Y and then Pokemon Sun and Moon were both very interesting games. They have their flaws, but like Pokemon moved into a new generation with it. Specifically, I think X and Y is a really underrated game. And then the Sun and Moon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon are a lot better, I think, than the original. But like,
yeah, Pokemon Chromosome is my favorite.
Exactly. But Pokemon X and Y has the best villain of he's like, I'm going to blow up the world.
I don't know, about time they finally just had a fucking Bond villain in a Pokemon game.
The flaws of the 3DS are, I just think, for a lot of what it is and the step up it is, it was just maybe a little too late.
Yeah.
Yeah, also, for me, a lot of the series that continued on the 3DS, either I think they were weakened by the 3DS, or they just weren't as good as what came before.
It did have an analog stick, which was really nice. It actually has I do like the analog stick quite a bit.
It's one of the things I think the Super Mario 64 remake should have been saved till here.
Yes.
Because the run button really fucks 64 a lot. So.
It feels good in your hands. The main screen is gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's a good system. I actually think the 3DS XL is just really cool. It's huge and actually
that was the one that I had.
has.
I had the
It
Smash
also
Brothers one,
3DS
the
has
red
one of my all-time favorite Dragon Ball games came to it, and Dragon Ball Fusions, which only came out on the 3DS. It's a good system. It's a solid system. It's unfortunate, kind of like a lot of it is. I would probably put it at the top end of Neo Geo.
It's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That it's got a lot of good stuff in it, but also it just kind of came and went.
Yeah.
Speaking of came and went,
Speaking of coming and going,
I think the DS is the best handheld system ever because of all the things. If Sony had actually cared, they had the best handheld system ever right here in the Vita.
give us your argument.
Dual analog sticks.
Dual analog sticks, as close to PS3 capable graphics on a handheld. All the games, it could remote into your PS3 and PS4, and you could play your PS3 and PS4 on the go wherever you were. PlayStation Now, before they kind of changed it, it had the libraries on it. It had a great online store. Here's the problem to it: there are no games on the Vita.
No, there are not. And all the games that are on the Vita, it's the Wii U problem. The Wii U had games, sure, but now they're all on the Switch. Meanwhile, the Vita, all the games that were on the Vita, most of them are on the PS4 now.
And
most of them are on the Vita now, except for Uncharted Golden Abyss. Fuck. Sony. I mean, I know it's probably impossible because, odd tangent, the Vita has one of my favorite puzzles in any game because it's so damn cool. It's Uncharted Golden Abyss. You're playing the game, and there's a bit where you have to line up a piece of paper to a light source, and the piece of paper takes up the whole screen. So you're like, well, I can't control it. Where's the light source? You hold it up to your light in the room, and that makes it shine through the paper. It's like, that's fucking cool.
The Vita is so good.
It makes it a hard game to play if you haven't paid your electric bill.
If you haven't paid your electric bill, you shouldn't be playing fucking video games.
You're not going to play the Vita because you have to charge it.
It's true.
The Vita also was going to have a cell phone connectivity. It was going to be an all-in-one type of console. I think it was AT&T is who I think they had the deal with. It had a great online, like a great just browser. Like it was a handheld little thing. Like you could watch YouTube easily on it. You could go to your favorite sites and things like that. It had apps. Legitimately, the Vita was an incredible piece of technology that Sony was like, look, we're going to compete with whatever Nintendo handheld is. What's that over there? We're done.
They didn't support it.
There's nothing on it.
They gave up on it immediately.
It is it literally, I'll tell you now, the Vita does everything the Nintendo Switch does. Literally does everything.
It's just, it wasn't supported.
It wasn't supported.
And that alone brings it down pretty
That's
hard.
probably why I would put it right here in one of these areas in Neo Geo, because unfortunately, it has no games.
I would put it below the Wii, personally.
The Wii has games.
That's fair. Honestly, because I'd put it below Sony's other handheld.
The PSP has games.
The PSP has games, even if Sony also abandoned that one as well.
Yeah.
Sony handheld's so good. Sony why? All right. Speaking of something Sony didn't abandon, the PS4.
PS4. This is where
we're getting to the generation where it's all interchangeable.
It really is.
This is where I completely check out of this, because after the 360, I became a Microsoft whore, which means the only time I had even touched a PS4 was at a friend's house.
The PS4 is one of the best pieces of technology. It is truly an all-in-one system. More people use it for their TV and their movies and everything as much as games. It isn't an entertainment system. It also really revolutionized in the ability to be able to stream your games. Built in from the get-go, you could just be, as long as you linked it to a YouTube, Twitch, or any of the other ones, you could just stream with a push of a button.
That was super cool. That was always super
huge.
cool.
That was cool.
It has a great game library, but as we'll say, the exclusives get very, very different as we go. The only system that has consistent exclusives is Nintendo now.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
Sony and Microsoft, their exclusives just ain't cutting it.
Because they keep buying them and buying their exclusives, and then laying off employees.
Because they keep laying off the fucking employees, for God's sake.
But I do love the PS4. It was a fantastic system. It fixed my problems with the PS3 controller.
Yep, the PS4 controller is one of my favorites.
PS4 is fantastic. It's a great system. It is a great system with a lot of great games. And then I still play all those games on my PS5.
Right.
I would put it probably right at the back end of New High Score.
Yeah.
I think I'd put it right above the Dreamcast is where I would put it.
I'm okay with that.
All right. Mason.
So it's on the X-Bone.
Because I have played the Xbox One time, and I hooked it up for somebody for a projector theater thing one time. I don't have any experience with the X-Bone.
All I know about the Xbox is it had a miserable launch, but it got better.
Yeah. Oh, it had possibly one of the worst launches we've seen of a video game. It was maligned. Some things were not true. A lot of it had bad press from things that weren't true about it. Microsoft was thinking about going they were the first one all digital, and you don't own the games anymore. We decide, we could do things like that. There were a lot of rumors flying around that some things Microsoft were saying, some things were just rumors. It had a lot of bugs initially on, but yeah, once they got to their second version of it, every issue was pretty much fixed.
So here is the thing about the Xbox One. For that first full year of owning it, I'm gonna be completely honest. There were a few times where I would look over the other side of the fence at PS4 owners, and I saw their what's the zombie game?
Call of Duty Zombies?
No, the Last of Us. I looked at their Last of Us.
Oh, Christ.
And I looked at their Final Fantasies. I looked at their Spider-Mans, and I would think to myself, I made the wrong choice. But then I'd pick up the controller again. I would go back into the old reliables, the Forza Horizons, the Rock Band 4s, stuff like that, and go, you know what? I'm satisfied with my choice now. I don't know why I went with the Xbox One over the PS4. Actually, that's a lie. I know exactly what it was. It was to play more Forza.
Yeah, I was like...
That was it. That was the franchise that I cared about, and only I cared about. But I don't know. There was just something about the Xbox that was just attractive to me. Like the user interface, I thought that just pulled me in more, and the way that Xbox presented itself, I don't know, it was just more for me. And then as it went on and we got Game Pass, that was really huge. Being able to, and the cloud gaming with Xbox.
Game Pass is such a big thing.
Game Pass
changed the game.
Yes, and I think for all of that, I think the Xbox One, I think it deserves a little bit more than what it got when it came out.
I think I'm going to put it beside PS4. I think we both kind of, that console, together they are very similar. I think put it in a good place there. I will say this might be the first console cycle where both of the systems were just incredibly sleek looking.
That is true.
Like, they both look super sleek.
It's so funny because they were both sleek, and then we got the designs for the Series X and the 5, and it's like, what the fuck is that?
Well, we've got a mini fridge and Seto Kaiba's jacket.
Got a mini fridge and a Wi-Fi router.
And we got a mini fridge and a heater.
So we end it, I think, perfectly on a system that may be ending here soon, the Nintendo Switch.
I love the Switch.
I do too.
The Switch, are there problems with the Switch?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I remember screen warping being a big deal when it first came out. Those controllers are incredibly tiny.
That's why you get a Pro controller.
But that's why you get a Pro controller. And a lot of this, it's just the concept itself is just so great. Just the idea of being able to play a game on a couch, then take the controllers out, put them on the side, take the console out, and then play that very same game with very minimal performance issues, and playing it on the go. Like, that alone is just all of the games that came out for this thing could have been utter crap, I think, and that concept alone would be enough to carry. Like,
it's game library, and one thing that, as a crew, as a group, we love classic games. We play a lot of classic games. The classic game library, and I'm not just even talking about Nintendo Online. I'm talking about the amount of games that have been remastered, repackaged, and put on the Switch is massive.
Just today, Hitman Blood Money got dropped on the Switch.
And then
Doom 64.
The Nintendo Online is not as good as the Wii U's version, but it still has a lot of good games on it. It
has a lot of good games, and more games that are coming, and more consoles that are being added on a yearly basis at this point.
The Switch is awesome. It has its small little flaws. I would probably put it right here.
I think that's fair. Yes.
I think I do like it more than the 360, but I think iconically for me and everything informative, I think I'd go that.
I think give the Switch like a few more years to reach the iconography level of the 360, and then we could.
And how pissed will I be when Switch 2 comes out and they say, all those online, we're shutting it down and you can't play it. Yeah, that'll change a lot of it. If Nintendo does those things.
Nintendo's got a Nintendo.
But at this moment in time, the Switch is just so awesome. Through its first-party games, through its third-party games, through its classic games, through its remasters, through its reboots, through everything, through its emulation. I love it. But this is our console tiers, guys.
It's very interesting. I wasn't expecting so many in those top 3.
I kind of, I think the proof is that, we put a lot of the consoles we loved on here. It would have been a little different maybe if we put ones we didn't know as much about, but
I also didn't want this to be one where we go over 80 consoles, and most of it's
We already spent so many time talking here today on this because this was a really fun topic. Let us know what you think. Comment below. Tell us your tier list. What would you like? What we rated too high? What we rated too low? Let us know.
Why didn't we put the Wii U at the very top?
Oh no. But we'll be back next time with another opportunity to bleep your tears.